Before we start, I just want you all to say hi to Haiti. She's here to administrate everything around the talk, the chat, the Q&As, and the popping of stuff that is going to pop up. So say hi to her, and then I think we can start. We're going to talk about the future of academic communication. It's going to be so much fun. My name is Jonna Ekman. I'm the communications director at StoryKit. My background is in journalism. So I've been working with stories and storytelling since I don't even know when. And I love it. And I know that everyone has great stories to tell, even the people who think they don't. And I have such a special guest. So, hi, Barbara. Would you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Yona. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me here and setting this up. Super excited to be here and have this conversation about one of my all-time biggest passions.
Communication.
Communications.
So tell me about your background.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. So currently I am over at Harvard Business School, where I run communications for the Institute for Business and Global Society. And really, we work with faculty and practitioners to get the word out about research that can really help decision makers make positive decisions around areas like climate change and economic mobility. And this has just been I just celebrated my second anniversary. So very excited about that and to shed more light on that as time goes by. But I came to academia from a completely different lens. I came from corporate communications. We have that in common as well, where I shaped corporate brands on a global scale, shaped the reputations of corporate leaders, CEOs, CFOs for large companies. And prior to that, I was a journalist in the United States and have bylines in many publications like USA Today, Wall Street Journal, and so on and so forth.
Oh, great. Of course, we need to just stop for a second and let you know what StoryKit is and why we're having this, hosting this talk at all. So we're the leading video automation platform. We turn content into high quality on brand scroll stopping videos automatically. You can also do them manually, but nowadays you can open your inbox and get videos just pushed into it. We've been working with helping higher education institutions, the academia, for a couple of years now. We have about 30 institutions in Europe that we work with who are using StoryKit to spread the word about student recruitment, research, and all of these things internally, externally, in many ways. And we're also working with a couple of schools in the US, and we love this subject because we love stories, and we know that in academia there are so many stories to tell. I'm going to talk a little bit more about video in the end of this talk and talk a wee bit more about StoryKit, but enough of that right now. So the agenda for today, we have a lot to talk about, Barbara, so let's dig in. We're going to talk about the state of academic comms, of course, the challenges and opportunities. And these are not the same for everyone, but there are so many things that you all have in common, I know. And when it comes to communication, we all have the same challenges and opportunities in a lot of ways. We're also going to talk about why this is so darn important and how communication can help in almost any way. And then we're going to dig into the hows, like how do we transform complex information into compelling content? How can we do it? What do we need? We're going to talk about a thing that Barbara likes to talk about, the return of ideas, ROI. And of course, video. Is it even realistic? Can you do it? And what do we want you to learn? We hope that you walk away today with a sense of the top skills that you need in communications today. We hope you have some tactics and hacks for a modern thinking leader, knowing what to do and how to do it, how to leverage technology, even if you're not the tech savviest person. Believe me, I am not, but I still use it every day. We want you to know how to identify opportunities for these quick wins, because there are so many things just lying there in front of you that you can do if you just see them. We want you to have a sense of how to craft your story and set yourself apart. And we want you to be the leader and the hero within your own organization or for your next opportunity elsewhere. So that's a lot of promises, Barbara.
Let's
Let
dig
us
in. I love a
let
challenge.
us yeah. Let us start with this tweet that you actually sent to me that I laughed so hard about. When the typical academic article gets published, not only do 0 people read it, even the author usually breathes a sigh of relief. I'll never have to think about that again. Is this actually true?
Oh, it's very true.
Is this the state of academic comms?
It sums it up quite nicely. It gave me a chuckle. It's been making its way around some of my academic friends, and it really does speak to the fact that, a lot of research is amazing. It gets published and then it sits there. And so there's a lot of frustration with with the academics, if they even think it's a problem, right? So those that who are frustrated are looking for help, and they're looking for answers and new alternatives to heighten the impact of their research, because they're not doing this research just to publish it in a journal and forget about it. They do want to help change practice.
Yeah, that's true. And that brings us to the state of academic comms. So what's going on? Why isn't the academia leveraging what they could?
Well, first, I'd love to back up a little bit and say the state of academia right now has, it's a complex landscape. We have demographic cliff, fewer students can equal fewer schools in the future. We have, even before you get to AI, there's online competition. AI is changing things. And then you have you have a culture, an academic culture, where I sense that it's a bit more cautious than I've experienced in the corporate world. There's a marketing mindset, and that's different than a proactive storytelling mindset. There tends to be a bit more focus on reactive, which can speak to, so you might, in some cases there, you might be slow to innovate. We've always done it this way is a common phrase that we might hear. But with all of these challenges, there's a point in time right now where we can reimagine academic communications, even just chipping away at it one step at a time. I'm really, really eager to talk folks through how they can be heroes in their organizations to help bring stories and research to life.
Yeah, definitely. And the stakes here are big.
They are quite big. You've got leaders, you have faculty who would like to be established as thought leaders. You have schools, organizations that are looking to have their brand lifted and shaped in strategic ways. This can make a difference between getting grants or not. You have alumni relations, donor relations. So you have a lot of different stakeholders, even before you get to the students, who are relying on, proactive storytelling. And honestly, many of the folks that I'm talking to, nationally, mostly in the United States, they're not used to having a function where people can focus on proactive storytelling and distribution.
So what do you do? What do people do? What do academic comms do today? Mostly.
Well, it really varies. And I would say that team sizes, in talking to a lot of friends at various, public and private universities, teams are small. Storytelling gets done as it can get done. It's, there may not be a budget for, large teams of, say, writers. I'm seeing a lot of people struggling with, do we use AI? Some people are hunkered down in, I will not use AI to, maybe interpret your research, for example. Some are open to it, when privacy concerns are allow them to. So it's sort of all over the map right now, which means there's fantastic opportunity to make a difference, which can also help your career in the long run.
Yeah. And then the question is, do we even have to bother? Why is communication so important in academia, and how can it help? What do you say?
Well, the list of reasons is a very long one. And it speaks to, again, academia's challenges just globally. And being a very modern communicator in the academic landscape can help your career, because you'll be on the cutting edge of trying things that are new. So that's another bonus. Audiences are changing. I think we all know, we're all on this call because we know, whether it's a student on TikTok, my own kids have their own, they're on Twitch, they're on all sorts of different things. So the audience, whether you're an alumni, a donor, a practitioner, or a student or staff, everyone's trying new technologies and, on different platforms than they used to be in the past. So don't we have to change too? We have to meet folks where they're at. You have new interdisciplinary collaborations, which presents folks like us with terrific opportunities to tell stories. So there's opportunity to seize on. And then I would argue that just like in my corporate roles and in the corporate world, when you're doing proactive strategic storytelling, you're also helping your brand and your, the entire employee workforce, help set them up for better, bigger trust, a trust exercise, which helps your brand. And when bad times come, or negative news cycles for whatever reason happen, that's going to help to the extent it can help, because you're operating from a position of at least some power. You've bought in some goodwill from the media, for example. So I've always operated under that assumption, and it's worked in the past, and I think it works where I'm at today as well. And then I would say the media industry is shrinking. So people like myself, I used to be staff, say, at USA Today for 12 years. We're no longer there. And media is shrinking even more. That's a whole other webinar. But we all know, that's true too. And overall, this can just build trust. So that's my big takeaway.
Yeah. I have an anecdote from when I studied at Uppsala University. I had a professor who once told me that a journalist called him and asked a question. And my professor said, "You're asking this question wrong." And then spent like 10 minutes explaining how he should frame his question. And then the journalist said, "Thank you very much," and hung up. And he was like, "Ah!" And I know if that's the way we communicate from like the academia to the journalists, I realize that things are and I believe in a world where we're more and more exposed to the whole fake news thing, and who do we trust, and what sources can we trust. I really believe that higher education, like the academia, has such an important place to be trustworthy and tell stories that we can trust.
1,000,000%. What part of what we're doing is really distilling and sharing research-based insights for that very reason, because people can trust academia, especially in a world where people are losing faith in the media sector, rightly or wrongly. This is where we are right now. So there is an incredible opportunity for whether you're an initiative, a center, a lab, if you're at a certain school, if you're at the main university, no matter what level you're at, there's a great opportunity to make the case for proactive storytelling.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so if we're gonna talk about this, how to actually transform, because this is complex information, not just complex, it's also these are not the shortest articles that you've read. It's not the simplest things that come out. It is supposed to be tough, but how do you create compelling content? And let's start out with an example from your side. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so this one is a piece that ran in the Financial Times Banker. And excuse me, when I first arrived here at Harvard Business School, we had an opportunity to start, digging into what distilling research means. So I was presented with this research that is about decarbonization and banks. And I thought to myself, and I'm a longtime business reporter, went to business school, dropped out of accounting, but still, business long time business school, business journalist. And I thought to myself, well, this is interesting. Let's give it a shot and see where this goes. I didn't have a team. It was just me. And I wound up really working to distill this piece and built a systematic approach that we've sort of evolved, but applied since then, where you're reading the research, you speak to your faculty, you write up a summary of key messages, they approve or course correct or edit, and then I went ahead in this case and wrote an article. And it turned out that the Financial Times banker was interested in running a piece on this research because it really spoke to their audience. And they wound up publishing the piece that I personally had written in their newsletter, which we loved, and we thought, our value proposition is working, our strategy is working, so we could keep doubling down on it. And this is just an example of an early win. Whether I'm in corporate or in academia, I love early wins. And this helped gain some trust with people around me, with my wonderful team and with faculty and fellows. And it showed people that, wow, if we control our own narrative and tell our own story, we can place it and do really interesting things with it and get the message out there.
Yeah. I guess what you did here was you found the story, the angle in the story that resonated. Because if you would have approached the journalist with this research, just here it is, they would never have the time and resources to find it themselves. Am I right?
No, I might have pressed delete in wearing my journalist hat. Yeah, that wouldn't have happened. They just don't have the time right now.
No.
There are some journalists that say, send me the PDF, send me the 80-page PDF, but most not. And in the interest of getting research out quickly and in a timely manner, we just, do the work for them and present it to them this way, and then set up the media interviews. But it's worked. And I see the numbers with the 350 million earned media impressions. Those numbers applied to a different piece of research. And yeah.
My mistake.
Yeah, no, and for that one, it's an interesting nugget worth sharing, but we did a similar exercise with with research around electric vehicle charging stations, where, again, it was sort of complex. There was a large language model. The scholars applied AI to extract real-time insights from about 1 million consumer reviews from EV drivers about charging stations. And the insights showed, among the insights, we picked a few insights. We worked with the faculty before they published their next iteration. So we did early faculty engagement, and helped shape that message, and released a story that said if you Google it, you'll find it, 78% of EV charging stations work, which is less than, say, a traditional gas station. And the story generated 350 million earned media impressions, 6 days, at least 7 languages. We broke it in Bloomberg, the Boston Globe, our local paper, took a different angle on it, and Politico, so for the Washington, D.C. policy angle. So we were able to hit each stakeholder, which, some of it applied to government grants, for instance, some of it applied to the auto industry. So we were able to kind of hit each stakeholder group and engage with them from that respect.
That's cool.
It was fun. Yeah. It was really neat to see that work. Yeah.
What happens when such a thing happens for you? Like, how is the internal reaction around you and so forth?
That's a great question. So it is extremely interesting. So I did a nice deck like I would do in corporate, and I don't know how many clicks the deck got. But the subject line was well received. And what I would tell this group here is that when you do things, and even if you produce 5 views of your distilled content, share it, because you've done something really important and interesting, and you've engaged, you've had impact. So that is real impact that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And so, no, people here are super proud of that. And we've communicated it in different ways. Decks, I would say, are not traditionally worth time in academic communications, but simple emails and saying, hey, how nice, and gee whiz, thanks, and letting people know that goes a long way.
Yeah, it does. It does. So, I mean, you come from Harvard. It's you have maybe, I don't know, but maybe a bit more resources, and you have a different background that many other people here have. Um, how can how can we do it? How can the person sitting at Stockholm University by themselves, like, I need to communicate? What should they do? How should they start? Where should they go?
I love that. So, how can you start is the key here. It can be so overwhelming that sometimes it's hard to start. Where do I start? One of the things that we talked about, Yona, was faculty intake conversations. And you can call them whatever you want, depending on your audience. But really, how we started, because there is no like nice big database of research. There are some, but it's complex, right? And you have to know that a pipeline may be years in the making. So what I started doing was asking around initially, just to faculty who wanted to engage. So building your allies, folks who are interested in collaborating in potentially a new style of working. So that is very helpful. Once you scale a little bit, what we found helpful was, in order to avoid really burdening faculty's time and their schedules, because they're very, very busy, we do these faculty engagement or intake meetings where there's simple conversations around, tell us what you're working on. When do you think paper XYZ will be published? Would you mind sharing it with us in advance? Some people are comfortable doing that, others less so. So it's really a matter of tailoring your approach to each person. That's why this is so hard. There is no template.
So actually talking to people is one of the keys here.
To people, old school,
Yeah.
sending a form or an email and expecting people to fill it out. I just bypassed that because I just didn't believe that was going to happen. And really, this was also about establishing trust, because this was a new, they don't have to do this, right?
No.
So if we're talking about tenured faculty, they don't have to. So, it's interesting to think about your own institution and whether you want to position it as a service or a partnership. So that's something that, culturally people should think through, because if you position it as a service, that could imply within a year you're going to be buried in work, because you'll be in demand at some point. I promise you.
Yeah. You have talked earlier to me about something you call hold the pen. Tell us about that.
I love hold the pen. So that is, again, one of these corporate secrets. When you're working with faculty and fellows and researchers, some of them will like to really edit, because they're used to with their academic papers, which is completely understandable. The idea for this type of work is to keep it simple, avoid jargon, explain things, LLM, that is a large language model. Maybe there are other ways we can refer to these things. So not go into these dense details. In order to do that, we do need to hold the pen, which again could be different for some people because maybe they've not done it before. So it does require a little bit of confidence to take this new approach. And I would recommend holding the pen throughout, from, idea and engaging in some sort of a partnership to distill, all the way to the approvals process. I've been in situations where about a year and a half ago, we had, I don't know, like 15 or so faculty after like a climate panel, a climate conference. And so we sent a lot of content to all of these senior faculty with a 48-hour deadline. And that's what I used to do for like, different types of financial releases in corporate. And that was just fairly standard. But it wasn't traditionally done here. And I have to say, the way it was phrased was, delighted. Thank you very much for your time. Please, look at this information and correct anything that looks wrong. We'll publish it, and we'll look forward to you in 48 hours. So I hope that's helpful, because it really works. We have not really had any problems with this approvals process, even though it may seem risky to some people.
Yeah, that's interesting. But when it comes to holding the pen, I also come from journalism. I also worked in PR for TV, and my job there was to watch a lot of programs and find out what was the angle, and call the journalists and tell them, well, in this episode of whatever program, this happens. And I realized, in a way, doing that for a TV show is easy. But in a way, I've learned that that's the way to do it. You look at what you have and try to find what's the interesting thing here.
Mhm.
And that's, for me, it comes quite naturally, because I've done that for years and years. But for people I many of the people that I meet, not just from academia, but in ordinary companies, they're like, everything we do is so boring. We
Yeah.
don't have, and then I look at it and I'm like, this is so interesting. Or I often do an exercise with companies that I ask them to go to a boring homepage and look at it, whatever homepage that they think will be boring. And then I ask them to come up with 3 ideas. And it's so easy for them, because it's so easy to look at someone else's stuff and say, well, this is super interesting. But then when you start looking at the things you have, you're like, this is just, do you have any tricks for like finding the thing?
It's funny, because boring is my favorite part of, and I wouldn't say here, but traditionally, some of the
Yeah.
biggest things that I've helped produced were rooted in boring. So I love that word. So what I would recommend is looking at, what you just described is a phenomenal exercise, first of all.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a great exercise. I wish I thought of it. And I think I'll use it in the future.
Yeah, it's great. I do it myself sometimes.
It's really great. So, really what you want to do is look at what you have from maybe your friend's eyes. It's not an easy thing, because we are really trained.
Yeah.
And, I hate to say this, but as if you want to try something a little modern, you can also enter some non-proprietary information and enter it into ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And kind of go back and forth with ChatGPT if you're not used to doing something like this. I also recommend, reading the news. If you're looking at something where, say, it's research around, research about EVs, for example, just read the news, because you'll be able to tie it into something that's trending and in the news. Pretty much there is no such thing as boring. I'm a firm believer in that, but it is about how do you tell that story in a way that's very compelling. And that is a bit of practice, and practice makes perfect. So even if you start, and it's not the most exciting thing, I think people here are professional communicators, and even without a journalistic training, they'll eventually get there.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that tip that you just said, to follow the news, because if you start to think, it could be something simple like what memes are trending, and try to figure out how does the thing I'm looking at connect to that funny meme. And sometimes you won't find that connection, but sometimes it just unlocks something like, aha, that's a way of looking at. So that's a really nice trick too. And when talking about AI, one thing that you and I've been discussing is making AI and ChatGPT your friend, and not being afraid of technology. And one of the things that I've said to many people is that we're also approaching a future where you might not even have to use AI, because AI will be infused in all the tools that you're already using. So the like a year ago, I heard a lot of people being quite afraid of AI. And now I'm more and more just, it's going to be like internet. You won't even think about it. And I think when it comes to technology, you have to be a bit open, because technology these days, it doesn't have to be complicated. Technology these days doesn't have to be like, it's going to take me a month to even learn this stupid program to be able to use it, because then that would be strange today. A lot of the things that you can use to make your content creation much more efficient are simple,
Yeah.
because that's the whole point of them.
Yeah.
Um, are you a tech savvy person?
I am. I think everyone here would agree that I am not a tech savvy person. So for
So how
sure,
do you approach it?
I am not tech savvy. So what I will say is that I am a bit of an AI enthusiast, is an odd word, but I'm now co-host of Boston Generative AI Meetup, where we're gathering key leaders, and I'm attending every single month, and understanding what's happening at a high level in the business world. I'm also exploring, and as part of my job here, the ethical considerations. So I'm immersing myself in AI to understand all of these trends, where it's going. The latest newsletter I read had to do with, AI is going after $100,000 a year jobs, including Wall Street analyst jobs. So, we know that this train has left the station. We just saw California State University announce a partnership with OpenAI, I think, across its entire system for certain use cases. So even though I am extremely not tech savvy, I'm trying to be as savvy as I can when it comes to AI. I mean, I think the rule of thumb that I hear in these AI circles is you may not be replaced by AI, but you could be replaced by someone who understands AI. And like you said, at some point, it'll be in the background. It's already being integrated in so many different applications. But understanding it and understanding how it can be your friend is going to probably help your career rather than hurt it.
Yeah, I do agree. We just got such a good comment from Brian here. I need to read it out loud. I think finding the thing can easily kickstart a discussion about brand. Many things are boring out of context. Understanding how stories fit into an institutional narrative clarifies how the story is part of a bigger picture. Even if the immediate story is not particularly interesting to a specific person, how it fits into a narrative may interest them. That's true, and should, if the brand is robust enough.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It depends on
Yeah.
what kind of storytelling we're talking about. So if it's a strategic type of story that we're telling, then that applies 1000%. When it comes to research, it's more of a faculty issue, but I love that. That's a wonderful way of thinking about it.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. So we've also talked a bit about, you mentioned it earlier, building a function and building standard processes and procedures. Would you want to elaborate a bit more on that?
Sure. So, initially, I would imagine some of the folks on this call, they may be working on their own. And they'll have to, if they want to try building this new muscle, it'll just be them alone. And over time, what they can do is build a business case and build a team. And I understand budgets could be very, limited and all of that. But if there is a case, if circumstances allow, I would really highly advise folks thinking about building a business case to obtain somewhat of a budget and think about how they can put that to use with creating a function. So it's an interesting time right now because journalists are, to state the obvious, there are fewer journalism jobs. So you are able to work with journalists that, who you couldn't have worked with before because they had a full-time job. So think about that. You can reach out to people, on LinkedIn and, try to expand your network that way. But if you're building the function, think about it as starting to assemble a team of folks who can help you reach your objectives. And so that starts with, what is my objective, and what are my goals? And that too might be a new exercise, because I've observed from talking to people around the country that that's not always something that's part of the academic comms job, where I have my KPIs, we want to hit so many people, we want to do this, we want to do that. So think about your goals. Think about what just a couple of things you might want to achieve in 6 months. It needn't be big. Try to you're not going to hire a PR company if you don't have content, right? You're not going to hire a PR company if you don't have excellent relationships with your faculty, who might on a dime talk about what's trending in the news because they're perfect for it and they've been media trained. So there are different stages to building a function, but in the end, what that can look like is you're editing. First of all, you've built a website that looks a little bit more modern and less academic. So that might be it as well. You have social media accounts that are where your key audiences are. So if you have Facebook, maybe they're on Instagram, so maybe there's an audit that they might want to do there. And the function can be as large or as targeted as people, see fit.
Yeah. One thing that we see also, I mean, we talk a lot to academia, but we also talk to a lot of companies doing whatever. And we see that when it comes to communication and content and these things, people are often still working in a very unstructured way. And it's all about like, what's the creative idea right now, or what's the campaign going to be? And we see that the pressure is on right now because the budgets are shrinking and the teams are often shrinking, and you need to do more and more and more of many reasons, because of how the world is, I mean, the world of social media and the world of communication and so forth, but also because we need to communicate more. Different teams in a company need to communicate in a way that they have never done before. I often compare myself to my father. He was the CMO of a shipping company here in Sweden for a very long time, and his job and my job are like worlds apart. He has never written a Facebook post in his life. He made like 2 campaigns a year, and the biggest mistake he could do was to be wrong. The biggest mistake I can do is to not be out there all the time talking about what we want to say and just deliver our message. And to be able to do this for companies, they need to build structures that I don't think that they have gotten to just yet. They have to look at like, how can I create not one, I don't know, LinkedIn post a week, but maybe 10, or as some companies that we've seen, like hundreds of LinkedIn posts or hundreds of Facebook posts every week. And if you want to do that, you need to have structures in place that you don't have today, and you need to start automating, and you need to start working in a much more efficient way. One of the things that I love, if I connect back to hold the pen thing, is to being able to be the driver of it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the worst pitfall that we see people fall into when it comes to communication is being in a world where they have to have everything approved at all times and having to ask for permission all the time. And if you can't be the driver of the communication, then it's going to be really hard.
Beautifully said. So there's a lot to unpack there. One thing I'd like to go back to is, like you said, we have to keep doing more and more and more. One thing I'd like to say about that is that, return on ideas is that with everything we do, it's not a once and done. We want to be thinking about how do we repurpose that at different times, on different channels, in different ways: newsletters, emails, talking points, speech writing, op-eds, webinars, pitches to media. and how many LinkedIn, maybe you're saying it on LinkedIn, repeating it on LinkedIn and any other channel multiple times throughout a year. So think about, with every piece of original content, it is not a once and done. It is a valuable asset
Yeah.
that, people took time and care to assemble. And then, when you're building the structures, and right, like you said, you have to build something that is sustainable. So we've been extremely buttoned up here about processes, procedures, project management tools, process, things that can help that process sustain, regardless of who is here. And it's extremely buttoned up. And like you said, people aren't always comfortable saying they're going to do something. People want to build into that system, task forces, advisory boards, what have you, right? Do that to the extent you need to do it. But then hold that pen and move forward, and don't stop until it's done, because, chances are high that it will be accepted nicely at least 80% of the time if it's done in a thoughtful way.
Yeah. So that's the return on ideas there.
It is the return on ideas, because of a lot of we're academic communicators. We're sitting on amazing information, whether it's stories of students or research that can change the world. Why not bring it to life in different ways where it can have impact, whether it's for the community or, for business leaders or alumni and donors?
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah, it's powerful. Yeah.
It is. We've been digging into tactical stuff for a while now, and I think we've talked about all of these and some more. So just a reminder, hold the pen, dare to dive into the technology, even if it feels a bit scary. Remember to leverage all the opportunities that you see, build these structures and process. And as we said, it doesn't have to be so difficult. Sometimes it just has to do with, it might be just talking to people. And set yourself apart with return of ideas. Return on ideas or of ideas?
Return on ideas, like return on investment. Yeah.
Yeah. And distribution. Yeah, that's love. I often talk about, I have been so fed up with people talking about what formats and what platforms, and I'm just like, let's not talk about content distribution anymore. Just talk about message distribution. I don't care what format, what platform. If your message gets out there, I'm happy. Sometimes it has to be a video, sometimes it has to be a text. Anything else you want to add to this, the tactical takeaways that I didn't put there?
Just a plan beats having a no plan every time.
Yeah.
Have some plan, even if it's just overview, goals, plan. Just have it on the record. You could share it around. It helps drive consensus, get feedback on it. Yeah.
Great. So we're going to talk a bit about video, and I've seen a couple of video questions popping up in the chat. But first of all, what's your view on video?
It's a must-have. It's not a nice to have. What I'd say is that we're seeing video far outperform what we're seeing with articles. Our top producing video has about, like 550,000 views, 970 engagements. And it's only, I want to say 3 or 4 months old. And it's on the financial markets, the concentration in the financial markets. We didn't see it coming. And it's long. It's like a 20-minute video. So it is very long. I can't say, what percentage are finishing it, but the engagement is off the charts. So, and we're regularly getting 60,000, 10,000 views, which, as far as I've seen in the past from academic videos, seems to be quite high. So really pleased. And it's again, it's vital, because people, half of the people on the internet are on YouTube at some point. So we all know the stats. My 80-plus-year-old mom is watching the news on YouTube. She's not watching the nightly news anymore. So your audience is great. And we're very specific, I have to say. We really speak to business leaders, so we're not speaking directly to academics. And you've got business leaders on YouTube as well. They might listen to it while they're cooking dinner, and it serves as a podcast. So people have different learning styles.
Yeah, definitely. And not just YouTube. I mean, every social platform out there today is video first. And even if they weren't from the beginning, they are now.
They are now.
Because that's just the way that people want to consume things. So a couple of questions to see here. Claudia asks, how do you encourage researchers at a research center to communicate via videos without fear of becoming caricatures?
Well, that's a great question, Claudia. Thank you for that. We take an approach where we're not using our iPhones. We actually have them sit down for on-camera interviews, and we support them with either media training. We do a pre-call. We talk through the key messages, 3 key messages at the most. So it is a trust building exercise before before the crew starts filming them. So that's one way we do it. And then we show them the results. And if anyone is uncomfortable, we show them many results. And we always tell people when we're doing the interviews, we have their backs. We're not going live. This is not a live stream situation, although I'm trying to make that happen next. But it's, if you can budget for it, to have a crew while you focus with your faculty or scholar or researcher, that would really go a long way to making them feel comfortable. I think it's that, professional communicator can make your people feel really at home and comfortable. And I guess the character side of it can come out. It's hard to say what will happen with videos once they go out, but if you start with really basic, a little boring research, that's a good way to develop some early wins.
Yeah, I can add to that because we see so many companies struggle with that. And I'm talking from my own perspective here, but StoryKit is a text-based tool where you don't even have to film people to create really, really good, engaging videos. And I think sometimes we are too obsessed with filming actual people. I know it works and I know it's great and I know that the audience loves it. But the truth is that there are a lot of people out there that hate being on video.
Mm-hmm.
You can still create videos of the messages that they have and the things that they're saying with still images or with no images of them, or just like doing quotes and text-based videos, like the ones that you mostly create in StoryKit. You can do talking head videos in StoryKit too, but so that is a way that we are coming around this. We, for example, when we do case studies, we often want people to be in videos, but they don't have the time, they don't want to be on camera and so forth. So we use their quotes in just many different ways in text instead. And that's another way to come around this, the fact that people hate being filmed.
Yeah. And the point is true that not everybody is comfortable.
And not everyone is good.
I was going to say, and if you're not comfortable,
then you're not going to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We had another question too, from Ruth. Do you have any examples of great researcher videos you've seen and the comms angle they employed?
Oh, wow. I didn't come prepared with examples from others, but certainly I know what we've done, and we've done videos around methodology, again, leaning in on the boring. And the faculty and the scholars, they come to life when they're talking about this.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if I could share examples later, but, with a couple of runs, maybe there are some practice videos you do on your iPhone, but faculty talking about methodology and, and their findings as well, clearly, all of those can be done. And there are a lot of great examples out there. So it is achievable. And, and if you could do it, if you can do it and they're open to it, do it in a lab, depending on what they're doing, do it in one of their natural settings, not a boardroom.
Yeah. So will you be working more and more with video work going forward, do you think?
Yes. No, I know 100%. I mean,
Mm.
we now have regular film days
Mhm.
that we as a team decide on, and it's a collaborative, very collaborative effort because, as we all know, engagement takes a while, reaching out, abiding by everybody's schedule demands. But we're taking it so seriously. We have actual film days, and then we use other methods to produce shorts on our LinkedIn, for example. And I think we did around 40 long form and around 60 for LinkedIn just last year alone.
Oh, great. Great. Um, because I am from StoryKit, I just need to just tell people how this works really shortly, because all of this that we've talked about is pretty much distilled in the blood of StoryKit, in the heart of StoryKit, because we want this content to come out as much as possible and is in as many ways as possible. So what you do in StoryKit is you put in your content either automatically or manually, and we help you automatically create a bunch of different formats. So if you have, for example, in this case, we have an article from our own homepage. It comes out as a basic trailer. It comes out as a summary. It comes out as a different trailer and also a third trailer. And these are just choices you can make. Like you can have longer formats, you can have shorter formats. We have a bunch of best practices in the tool, and then we have you can be able to tailor make as much as possible. And if you want to try this out, you can go to storykit.io and look up the higher education page. We will send this out to you in an email shortly. So then if you scroll down a bit, you can just paste your link and see what comes out. These are super generic AI-driven formats that we've created, and it won't come out with your own branding, but it's a way to try out the magic of it. So that would be fun. So Barb, do we have, I'm gonna check the chat. Did we have any more questions for Barbara or for me? If not, any final words from you, Barbara? What do you want people to go home with today?
I would love to make people feel great about what they do, and they are heroes in their organizations. Communicators are really the glue that can help academic institutions address challenges and take action on opportunities. So you're heroes. Keep doing what you're doing, and congrats on all the work you're already doing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being with us, Barbara, and thank you all for listening in, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Yona.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.